Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. Today we're going to have a bit of a small group seminar. So we've had at least one or two study groups around this topic before, but I think every day we work in this market, we learn something new. So we want to kind of bring you information and tools we've developed that are as current as possible and up to the minute to you as possible. And for small groups, it hasn't been too much longer than a year that we've had some really, really solid options for small groups across the country. I know when we first started in this business, we were generally looking at 100 plus lives for groups, but now we have options in this market that can get us um, coverage for groups down to 3 lives with guaranteed issue. So it's really been an awesome development. And I know for many in our community, you may have access to some smaller groups, but you're not talking to the AT&Ts of the world or the Microsofts of the world. And there's only a select few of us who do that. So we want to give you everything that you need to be able to approach a small group, have a conversation, and eventually get to a group long-term care sale or sale of other VB products, whatever it may be. So, Mark, this is a question of heavy debate, but what is a small group actually? What do we consider a small group from a nominal perspective? There are
It,
there are
it,
several different breakpoints, right?
yeah, it's what the carriers allow us to get with guaranteed issue. That is our definition of what's a small group, which is now three. It was, like you said, 50, and then it was 25, and then it was 10, and then it was five. So the more carriers that enter, the more competition, the more you're gonna find these sweet spots. We also know there's a couple of traditional carriers that will probably enter the group space and will be catering to employer-funded small groups as well. So continue to expect it to keep coming. But the latest carriers that are in that small group space, I think it's pretty exciting because they have dedicated small group programs. They accept employer funded, which is really what makes it possible to do small groups because you're kind of meeting the participation requirements right away. And their products are not diluted in terms of the value you get. That was actually the eye opener for me was how good a deal even going down to that number of lives is. And we'll go more into what's happening there, but I don't think you have to sacrifice a lot just because your employer is smaller. You do have to think about how to get employer funding though to make it successful.
Yeah, I mean, many of us come from the individual space. We understand the, underwriting landscape there. And, we're always talking about the fact that guaranteed issue is really one of the top reasons. It might be the top reason to look at group coverage, even for groups down to that 3 to 5 number. So definitely not something to be discounted if you're talking to any sort of business owner. As long as they have 3 plus employees, you may be looking at a small group opportunity, even if you're still going to do individual business with that business owner. So people are always looking for a reason to go back through their book of business and search for opportunities that are available. And this is as good of one as I've seen in a very, very long time to be able to go and say, hey, remember when we did some long-term care planning for you, we had the opportunity to bring that to your employees, and it's an opportunity for you to add to what you currently have for coverage, and we can sort of evaluate that without any medical underwriting. And you don't get opportunities like that very often. So,
Yeah, let me add one other thing too, which is a lot of our early cases are people in this group that are buying it for themselves and their employees, right? You have a couple of employees, you are eligible for this offer too. So definitely take a look at it first for your own company and then go through that process yourself. That's going to teach you a whole lot about how to operate in this market for clients. Because a lot of it also has to do with how productive, efficient you are at actually doing the enrollment itself,
right.
right? So once you see the steps that are required there, that's going to help you understand how to build a business around it and what types of minimums you want to impose. It's not the carrier imposing the minimum. You might say you have a minimum because you need to make sure it's worth your time to do the actual enrollment itself.
Yep. And I want to just shift gears a little bit and talk about what do small groups value? Just from experience and working with some of them and how might they differ outside of kind of the amount of resources required and economic viability of putting enrollments together? How do they differ from larger group sales?
In terms of process or sales or what aspect of it? Sorry.
Yeah, I would say just the whole sales process in
Okay.
general.
Well, first thing is you have to, like we talked about, do the employer funded sale. So you have to kind of give an idea of what the budget is going to be for that. A lot of people expect long-term care to be very expensive. And because we can get it very inexpensive in the group market, you can really surprise them on how inexpensive it is. So having your process, we'll go through kind of the one pager and how to use that to come up with like a group quote so that the employer knows what they're going to pay for. It always comes down to that. As a voluntary benefit, it's almost like a no-brainer to add because it doesn't cost the employer anything. It's just more of their time and their employees' time. As an employer funded benefit, now you're really kind of making them write the check and you have to present something compelling and they have to understand the value of offering it. So that's where the sale is made. The good news about the small group side is once the sale is made with employer funding, the enrollment's a lot easier because somebody's already paying the check. And now it just has to make sure how do you get them the group certificate and go through the application, do a little bit of education about what they're getting from their employer. That's really where it's at. You
Yeah.
will still also be able to offer voluntary coverage on top of what the employer is paying, but you have to think about the work required there because that is more of a sales process on the voluntary side. So
Yeah.
that's what I would describe as kind of what the considerations for small groups to look out for.
Yeah, and you as the broker or the agent coming in to make the small group sale, like Mark said, you have kind of control over what limits or standards or thresholds, whatever you want to call it, you put into place. But I would say employer funding, though not technically technically required, is customary. That's probably a better word to use because participation requirements are actually a bit more strict on small groups compared to large groups when you think of the percentages. So some of those carriers like Transamerica that does guaranteed issue down to 5, Allstate that does guaranteed issue down to 3, they require that every employee participate. And so you either have to count on all 5 of those employees voluntarily purchasing a plan or just make the employer funded sale and not have to worry about those participation requirements. Because larger groups, they're like a 5% participation requirement. So when you bring it down to those levels, it's 100% participation is required. So you really don't want that headache,
Yeah,
as far as
I'll
I'm
give you a
concerned.
sneak preview to that. It's not going to happen.
It isn't. It isn't. It isn't. So that's obviously one of the biggest things. But what do you find? Do you find, Mark, that small groups share different values from larger groups, or largely kind of the same mission statement? We're trying to put great benefits in place for our employees that are participated in. Um,
Yeah, it's still about the same kind of reason why the employer would do it for a larger group. And we went through like a lot of that rationale in prior study groups, so we
mhm,
won't kind of go through all of those reasons. The difference I would say is that you're working with like a more controllable opportunity, like almost like an individual opportunity. You can literally have all the employees on one meeting to talk about it before they even have to enroll, which is what we've done with a lot of these small groups is just talking to them. Would you value this? You can do a live survey right on that call. You know, you're not having to deal with like figuring out how do all these people feel about it.
right.
So from that perspective, it's a little bit easier to manage. And again, those people are going to be people you build relationships with individually, versus a lot of large groups, we never even meet the end employee, right? They see us on a webinar, they go through the enrollment page, they self-enroll. We don't even know who they are. With small
Right.
groups, you're probably going to know a lot more about each person in that group.
Yep. And that relationship building is important, right? Because with small groups, sometimes we see Um, they're either a newer company that's building up and growing and has the potential to be a much larger relationship for you over time, or they're a small family-owned business that's kind of closely held with a really kind of tight-knit culture where, if you're able to kind of make that sale and get your foot in the door, you'll have a very good experience from then on. But also some of those groups that are just getting started might not have other voluntary benefits products that you see most employers with nowadays. So it's another opportunity to kind of cross sell there as well, because that small group may not have a broker yet, right? In many cases, we've had a study group talking about working with HR. I think small groups are going to end up just as busy because I mentioned on that study group, they may not have an HR department, but they have that one employee that is designated to do the HR duties, right? So you're going to have to be pretty close to that advocate and make their life easy too. There's still it's not exactly shooting fish in a barrel, but there are tons of opportunities, right? And opportunities to grow with some of these small groups. So I would certainly not count it out.
Yeah, there's probably far more small businesses in the United States than anything else, right? So the opportunities is pretty endless, and including you work with business owners already. So just look at your current book of business, right? And if they have 2 employees, that's a potential prospect here.
100%. And there are benefit brokers that are out there that you may work with or you may have the opportunity to work with that really specialize in that small group space. They're out there and they need to know that group long-term care is available for groups in their size segment because previously, even if they're kind of up to date, you in being a part of these study groups are among the most up to date people on group long-term care, whether you like it or not, right? So some of the benefit brokers out there may just think that oh, the 100+ group options are all that's available. So most of my groups are going to be counted out from group long-term care. That's your opportunity to come in and say, I can give you some options to be able to offer to your groups, right? So there's really great opportunity that comes from that as well.
I saw a couple
Uh,
of comments or questions in the chat.
mhm.
Jason. Gene was asking, seems like a no-brainer. I think he's saying many less than 10 employees, maybe C corps. Um, has there been an uptick in such enrollments as the requirements have dropped? And we've seen it, but it's pretty new. So I don't know kind of what the market's saying yet. One thing I will point out though is that this is not the small business sale of the past where you were doing it on the tax deductibility. Okay, so that is one thing
Yeah.
that's probably different about this hybrid market and the way the carriers think about their products. Usually they're using post-tax dollars, or you're treating it like a 162 bonus plan, right? Where they're going to get deducted at the business level, but the employee is going to see that as imputed income. Okay, so that's not really the play with C corps as much, from what we've noticed at least. But it might be when the traditional carriers come back into the space.
Yep.
I think we are seeing an uptick, and there's a couple of reasons we'll talk about today. But I personally see a lot of product opportunity value from the product side of things. We'll speak more of this, but Allstate recently came out as of January 1st with a 5% compound inflation rider that increases not only the monthly benefit but also the pool of benefits, and it's priced very attractively. So if you were to look at getting an individual policy versus a group policy, there's a lot of to be said about doing it with Allstate because you're not going to be limited on the value or the amount of coverage you can get even anymore. So that's kind of what we're seeing is it's more of getting into the markets where you can get a more comprehensive plan even with the small group now.
Yeah. That said, I would say don't anticipate it to be like the a super quick sales cycle just because, this business has 5 or 10 employees. You need to find the right group, right? It's still an employer funded sale. You are still trying to help this business understand why it's important to pay for this benefit for their employees. And that's
Mhm.
going to take time, right? Just like talking to an individual about contributing a chunk of money toward an insurance plan in general, right? So it's not something that is just so easily put on a conveyor belt. I'm not going to say it's like super rigorous, super challenging, but you have to find the right group and you have to make that
Mhm.
value proposition of employer funded group long-term care stick.
Yeah, I think the old rules apply in one way, which is you need to find a profitable business, right? If they're struggling to meet their payroll, for example, they're not going to be thinking about spending money on extra benefits as much. But if they are a profitable business, that's where they may be willing to do this. And there's the business value for doing it. So that's one thread that I would look for.
Or as you've said in the past, a nonprofit who has, obligation to
Fair enough. Yeah.
have expenditures. So
Budget to spend. Yeah,
yes,
that's
correct,
key.
correct. Yeah, it reminds me of the surplus episode of The Office where they're deciding what to spend their surplus on, right? That's a good scenario to find yourself in.
Wendy also points out, which is important, and we'll talk about this a little bit, that women small business represents the majority of small business owners, and the long-term care products on the group side are unisex priced. So women are getting a great value, even above and beyond, because it's not gender distinct pricing like it is on the individual side.
Yep. Besides profitable, any other considerations you have for really good small group candidates? Like I often think of, you know, small law firms that may want to do a carve out for partners. Any other particular businesses that you like to target outside of profitable, which is good?
I like looking for the low-hanging fruit opportunities. And so if you have someone who you really have to convince of the need of long-term care planning, I don't think you have to do that here because you have so many, it's a target-rich environment, I will say. Go back to people that have already told you they wanted long-term care and present a new solution to them.
Yep. Yep.
That's what I think. Go back to those that already own an old long-term care solution from like a Unum or a Genworth group plan in the past that no longer takes new employees and hasn't over the last 10 years, and say, hey, I have something that you can now offer for your new employees. So that to me are the ones to go after because they're going to have the same reasons why they brought it in the first place. You're not going to have to sell them on like the concept of why they're doing it. You're just going to have to sell them on the value of it and the employer funded aspect of it.
Yep. Yep. Let's see. We have a question. What happens to the premiums when an employee retires? I'm assuming the policy is portable and the retiree can opt to continue to pay the premium. Yes, absolutely. The policies are portable. So if you retire, separate from your employer, whatever it may be, though they would have to take over the employer funded portion of the premium and whatever other premium they may be paying if they were splitting it up in some way, they can actually take that policy with them and take over the premiums. When you actually enroll and get your certificate, it's an individual policy right out of the box. So that really helps make things easy.
Yeah, and I'll make it easy too, because that's a great question, is these are group worksite products, but they've designed them based on what individual products and contracts look like. So when we look at the contracts, there is a little bit of nuanced language there, but you're going to see very similar terms, 90-day elimination periods, indemnity style benefits where you need qualified services, but they'll pay you the full monthly amount. Extension riders, like we see with individual hybrids, that have extension riders. So I think you're going to see a lot of similarities there and not a lot of gotchas. The one big thing is that because these are hybrids, they're really designed to have level premiums for life. So not to have rate increases. Okay, some of them are more guaranteed than others, but those are like, more tail risks, because they're pretty solid structures. And the benefits also, most part designed to have the full benefit throughout your life. Now, that's where you kind of get into the weeds with different carriers and sweet spots and pros and cons, but it's not going to be something where you're going to promise something to your client and it's not going to be delivered from a contract perspective, 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Yep. So I think more carriers entering the market and offering small group solutions is something we're pretty bullish on. But do you want to have a discussion about what carriers in the market right now are offering coverage for small groups and maybe look over a
Yeah.
few tools?
Yeah, we'll talk about like under 50 lives just to kind of,
Yeah,
Jason,
yeah.
use the carriers thresholds like we talked about.
Yep.
Right now, the probably the big two carriers in this space are what you mentioned, Transamerica and Allstate benefits. And you have with Transamerica pretty much a universal life product. They also have a whole life, but most people use their universal life product. You have the ability to offer it at a high cash value, which means it's going to be like an overfunded or fully funded universal life versus like a high face amount, which is minimum funded. So they give you a couple of ways to be flexible. The client can change their premium though, as soon as they buy it as an individual policy, Jason. So you actually own an individual contract, which is nice. And on the Allstate side, it's going to be mostly whole life. So, you kind of have your choice of universal life versus the whole life model, with each of them having kind of some sweet spots that we can kind of cover here. But those are the two that I would focus today on in the small group space for guaranteed issue coverage.
Yeah, 100%. So I just want to show people how they can actually go about finding out about some of this for themselves. BuddyIns.com/group. Super easy access. If you go to our website, you can hit join BuddyINS group. And when you scroll down, you will get our product buddy tool. Now, if you have a small group or really any group you'd like to kind of inquire about, why don't we go to Nebraska, just like Charles did? And we have, let's say, an employer, and we can go between 1 to 4 or 5 to 49. You will get some options here. Transamerica and Allstate are really going to be the #1 players here, but you can get this one pager that will tell you all the ins and outs of the products. And you can see, even for like groups of exactly 5 employees or groups 5 to 9 employees, we have those rules spoken for, so you can kind of get an idea of your options for your specific group size. This is a presentation that you can download right here and actually use this for the sale and for the presentation to the employer to help them understand at a glance what's the value prop of the product, what are some of the guarantees, features, who's eligible, what are the long-term care benefits, and what do they look like, and then sample premium rates, right, for guaranteed issue, max, and minimum. You can also see if the true long-term care rider is available for the case, extension of benefits and restoration of benefits, so you don't have to worry about remembering on a state-by-state basis. So this is definitely a first stop that we would recommend in the sales process if you're looking to find out about what options your group has.
Yeah, and I want to point out something because that's a great point, Jason, that each of these carriers has different availability of their features. As newer carriers are still getting approvals, and this is going to be updated pretty continuously. So I would still go to the carriers just in case we're not as up to date because they don't give us like constant updates on all the state releases, and make sure what's available, because you can do an RFP with both carriers and find that out. But you'll find that certain states have sweet spots because of where they have the extension rider, the restoration rider, and this tool will guide you in that direction a little bit.
100%.
One thing also about the tool, this is funny, it kind of reminded me of it. Sometimes you forget stuff, right? And we're in this market day in and day out, and I forgot about Chubb. Like you scroll down and Chubb's on there, and you're like, well, why is Chubb on there for the small group? Chubb actually has a kind of a workaround program where they have their product filed as an association offering in a lot of states. So as long as you are an entrepreneur, so picture a business owner, you can actually get their product through an association offer. It doesn't have the extension rider on this particular version of the Chubb product, so you'll see it's not as much leverage in the pie chart there. But still, it's a good option to consider in the right situations. But that's
Yep.
more of a workaround than a standalone product you'll get through Allstate or Transamerica.
Yep, for sure. And even if we take it down to the 1 to 4 size segment, that's what we're saying with the Chubb offer. And then Allstate can actually support groups of 3 to 5 employees. So we've got a separate version of the one pager that even speaks to that. Again, you're going to get a little bit different of an offer compared to a group that is 6+ employees. But for Allstate, you're not going to have simplified issue underwriting tiers. You're going to have just kind of the GI available here. And if you have a group of under 6 employees, I guess it would help if I maybe blew this up a little bit. So I'll save it and pull it up. But you have to enroll one other voluntary benefit alongside the life with long-term care if you've got a group of 3 to 5 employees. And each employee must enroll in 3 of each, right? So let's say you have a group of 3 and you want to go with Allstate. To offer their GWL, their guaranteed whole life product, all 3 employees must enroll in that GWL product, and all three employees must enroll in something like an accident indemnity, critical illness, whatever it is you choose to offer. So it actually is a pretty good opportunity, especially for a group that's growing, to be able to offer a couple of products side by side. That'll certainly open up the conversation to looking into what other voluntary benefits may you have been considering adding that we can look to see if we can make available for this enrollment. But remember, 100% participation on both, if you're dealing with a 3 employee group, is something that you're going to have a very, very, very difficult time accomplishing without some level of employer funding.
Yeah, the way they do it, I think a simple way to think of that is they have a 6 app minimum.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Good
you're
point.
doing 2 products because you need to hit 6.
Keep it simple.
One other thing I'll mention, and this was kind of really eye-opening, and we talked about this probably in the past, but Allstate's product in California and Utah are especially attractive because of that 5% compound inflation rider. So even though they're limiting you to the GI at 75,000 of long-term care, when you add the 5% compound inflation and you do the math, they're doubling the 75,000 with the long-term care extension to 150,000, and it's going to go up by like 4 times that amount when you look at it over 30 years. So you really have a $600,000 long-term care benefit there. So we kind of put that together. Jason just pulled up California, so you can see it in the one pager, like it's starting off at 4,500 a month, but in 25 years, it's 14,500 a month monthly benefit. That is not a small amount of coverage, right? And this goes down to 3. So I think the play right now is if you do have clients or referral partners, benefit brokers in California, get that message out, because this plan, I don't know how long it's going to be out there actually, I think it's kind of complicated, so you have to really understand long-term care to understand the value. But the way it's priced is very attractive. You can kind of see from our Benefit Buddy leverage number there. And we'll kind of go into, we have a calculator as well you can use to look at different ages. But I compared this just to give you an example. This is like a 34-month benefit, so like a 3-year plan. I compared this to other hybrids like that are popular in the individual market, and it blows them away on the individual side because of how it's priced. So you're not going to sacrifice much doing a group plan because of the value prop and how it's priced here.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about comparing this to other carriers aren't even offering any inflation protection to speak of. Though there are considerations for, let's just move to another state. We'll just do something like Michigan, Transamerica. Oh, and you can see a nice little change in Transamerica. Only the chronic care rider is available in the state of Michigan. So you're getting an idea of how Product Buddy can kind of give you an idea of the specs. But Transamerica allows you to go up to $500,000 of life insurance at simplified issue with an extension of benefits rider. That's $1 million of long-term care at $20,000 a month. So with Transamerica, their advantage is their simplified issue limits are so high that you can kind of build in your own inflation protection. And when we enroll Transamerica products, that's something that we talk about, or other carriers that have really high simplified issue limits. That's an advantage as well. But it's kind of a couple different ways to slice it there. So you've got 2 really strong options for small groups sitting there.
Yeah, and it's funny like how many different niches there are. Use that tool because you'll forget. Like I just forgot, Jason mentioned that simplified issue amount. That's a huge deal with Transamerica. And I wouldn't be shy about using their chronic care. I know that we try to focus on LTC riders and 7702B when we can. But when you look at the contract language of what's the chronic care, it's identical and sometimes even a little bit more favorable than the long-term care languages. Okay, so just because they don't have long-term care technically from a 7702B, don't avoid it. Just kind of dive a little bit deeper and make sure that it's what your clients need from a contract perspective.
Yep, 100%. So Mark, I will give you the opportunity to show something we've been working on that I know you will love, because Mark loves anything that's a calculator and that shows detailed numbers and analysis. But I think this is really, really impressive. And we'll give you a sneak peek of our group products calculator, which you will see in the Buddy system. coming up very, very soon here. You'll also see this on Tuesday study group because we're just letting Mark have his cake and eat it too. We're doing a calculators study group on Tuesday. I'm just going to lay it out there for you. We are talking all about calculators because we have calculators coming out of our ears now, and they can help you in a lot of different scenarios. And this group one is probably my favorite of all.
Okay, I'm starting off with the individual one
Oh,
first, and then I'm
okay,
going to jump to the
okay.
group.
All right, you're
Oh,
getting a big sneak preview then.
yeah, because we do have the ability also to quote individual products with the calculator. This is just a sample traditional product like you would see with Benefit Buddy in the portal, but this is a quick quote tool. It's one you can also potentially embed on your website. So if you have interest in using this as kind of a marketing tool, lead generation type of thing, we do have some people that are testing it out that way. But like I said, you just choose the type of product, traditional or hybrid. We have the pay-as-you-go model. So this is a pay to 100 hybrid product. You can choose the age of the client. You can choose a claim age. So that's how long it's going to roll out the premiums and what benefits, what point in time the benefits are paid out, age 80, female or male, and then monthly benefit. A really quick and easy way to get an idea of the value prop in different situations. Like Jason said, we are going to be embedding this into the Buddy system. We expect that to be available in March. So coming pretty soon here. On the group side, we have this concept as well. And we really taken, so you've seen the sample age 45 in that product buddy. Well, we've taken a lot of the carriers. You'll see we have right now all four of the carriers we've talked about. There's probably like 8 different plan designs that we have in here. And you can choose the plan design you want. So let's do the Allstate no inflation just to start off with it. And it's going to give you kind of a sample price point. You can change the age here. So you can look at, okay, let's say I'm working with a 50-year-old client. How does that price look? How does that leverage look? And it just kind of makes the numbers a lot easier. Remember, you're doing a $100,000 death benefit here, but it's doubled for long-term care with the extension rider, and then another 100,000 is paid to you as a death benefit. So you're actually getting triple the amount of coverage from what life insurance you elect as a maximum. So it's 300,000 tax-free benefits. And again, when we look at different situations, it's not all about spreadsheeting or it's not about this. You want to know also what niches it has and features it has. But this is a good way to get an idea if your client's interested, right? You're going to be working with a business owner. They may not be 45. We want to be able to give you different ages to look at. And if you're curious about how much the employer funding costs, this is a real easy shortcut, right? You can pick an amount of coverage. Here's the premium. Okay, they have another employee. They're 54. There's the premium. Just add it together, right? You can come up with a very quick employer funded estimate by just adding up the monthly premium for the 3 to 5 people individually. If you send us the census, we'll run that quote for you. We'll run it through our pricing tool. But you have all the carriers here where you can actually do an employer funding estimate right on the fly while you're talking to them live. So this will be in the portal as well in the next couple of weeks. You'll see it'll be called the group quick quote tool. And we use this each and every day when we're doing all these quotes that we're getting through the door. I do want to point out again that special notice about how to present, some of the value prop in California with that Allstate 5% plan. We have that kind of listed here as well. And you'll notice we went from $239 to $324 a month. Now that's a price jump of about 35%, right? But normally when you add 5% inflation on the individual marketplace, it would cost you double or triple what your no inflation cost is. And so again, we're doing the numbers and we're looking at, okay, how much does this benefits add up to? And because of that starting off point, they do a 6% acceleration of the benefit amount, so 6,000 a month. That's going to increase to 15,000 at claim age 70 here. You can also pull in kind of some higher claim ages, right? If you want to kind of look at it like an individual, you could have 31,000 a month because of that 5% compounding. Now, when you're dealing with small groups, just remember the big difference between small groups and large groups is the amount of GI limit you can get.
Yep.
So that's where you're going to have a limit. Most of the time, you're going to get limited to $75,000 with these small groups with Allstate. But again, that's okay when we're looking at, pretty high benefit amounts, even off of that 75,000 starting point. So don't get caught up, in kind of the 75,000 number. Look at what the future benefits play out to with the riders, because that's where the value is. And this is what you really need to present to your clients to help them understand, why this solution makes sense for them beyond the guaranteed issue. It's also got pretty comprehensive coverage here too.
Yeah, and what I want to reinforce is that these tools that we're showing you right now are really coming together to be an end-to-end sales process. So if you're wondering what to put in on the calculator, you can actually look at Product Buddy and it will give you, based on the size segment that you're looking at, what the GI max is likely to be, right? So if you do pick a smaller group, you will actually see normally what the limits may be for a group of this size, right? So you can see for Allstate, 75,000 of GI, for a face amount up to 250,000 SI for a face amount. So that kind of informs you. This gives you the specs of the product. This gives you like what the normal offer is for a group in the size segment. Then when you go into the calculator, you're doing it in a much more pointed way that's accurate to what offer your group is likely to get. So this is going to be, your step-by-step process that's easily done and aided by tech for selling group long-term care.
Yeah, one thing I'll point out here too, because this can be a confusing point. When we talk about face amounts and then we switch over to long-term care amounts, it can get confusing pretty easily. What we
Mm-hmm.
do in here, because we think that this is the way to present it for a long-term care focused sale, is we talk about the LTC pool with the extension rider, and then we put the death benefit in parentheses here. Okay. So this is a $75,000 death benefit, but again, with the doubling of the duration, right, with the extension rider, it ends up getting to be 150,000, and this is with the growth in the 5%. So those are the moving parts. You kind of have to kind of master how to explain that, but it's just like an individual product works. So I'm sure most of the people on this call are pretty familiar with how to explain inflation protection.
Yep.
Jason, you also mentioned process, and I think it's really important to note that we've talked about this a lot. Group is as much about the process as about the product. You have to give them a great customer experience all the way through that process. So from this perspective, this is how you sell the case, which is the most important thing. Once you are to implement the case, there is a learning curve there. And one thing we're rolling out is a BuddyIns small group solution, one that you can also use on a self-service basis. So many of you have seen that we have email campaigns, we have a microsite with marketing. We can embed this calculator so that employees can go to it and quote their own product during the enrollment. We have an enrollment platform that we've built and integrated with the carriers. We can do list billing, we can do direct billing. So it's got all of the flexibility, this platform, that you need to sell effectively a small group case. The carriers do not provide you that support. So they don't have those tools off the shelf, which is why we built it. They're not presenting it as long-term care forward as much as a life insurance product with a long-term care rider. So I think it is really important to make sure you think through that end-to-end process, and we're here to help you with that. And that's why we built something where you could do this on your own. We're still working on the name, but we might call it Buddy in a Box. Make it easy for you to do yourself. Okay, and obviously, if you're doing it yourself, you can keep most of the compensation, most of the commission. So at the end of the day, there is much less cost to doing it that way. But first, you have to get the opportunity. So that's why we focused a lot of this on the opportunity. Just remember that the process you still want to run as an appropriate education and an appropriate way for them to enroll. Because if they have trouble getting getting their policies, or if the employer has to spend a lot of time figuring out how the billing works, all of a sudden you're going to hurt a client relationship. And we just want you to know that they haven't built it streamlined like we're trying to do for you here.
100%. Yep. So you're going to see over the coming months and really for the rest of this year, a lot of things that are designed to, again, kind of help assist you through this sales process. And I think this especially helps the small group market because the more you can kind of keep it self-service, lightweight, easily kind of distributable, marketable, and nimble. That's what we're talking about when we say you need to kind of make sure this is economical for you. So we're trying to make it as economical as possible for you to have a small group, kind of run it through this sales process and feel like it was a relatively painless experience. So there's a lot more developments to come in that space as well.
Yeah. And I want to kind of also give credit where credit's due with the carriers. I mean, they're really opening up this market for us. They're really working closely with us to make sure that we do have a good experience together. So just their investment, and willingness to really dive into long-term care, we're seeing that really blossoming. And I think other carriers are going to copy, right? Copycat that, which should give us more options in the future too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think whenever we speak with the carriers in person, on Zoom, whatever it may be, uh, we hear that they are looking for people who are knowledgeable in long-term care and can sell their long-term care as a long-term care product. Who would have thunk, right? I think there are benefit brokers out there who maybe don't understand how to offer this as a long-term care forward product, and really hearing from a long-term care specialist firm like us is really refreshing to them a lot of the time, and seeing the way we market it and present it. So the carriers are looking for folks like you who have group opportunities, who really know how to place this business with some of their warm relationships with business owners and groups small to large, right? So just understand that it's a great time to be a long-term care specialist, and you're in high demand. Coming off of Washington State, the group business really kind of stayed on that steady path of growth, innovation, reemergence, and they're looking for you. They're looking for you guys again, and not just being the lead on a group, right? A lot of carriers really also like that we have long-term care specialist consultants to help with greater planning questions and things of that nature, that white glove service. So, yeah, it's a good time to take advantage. Anything else you wanted to mention, Mark? We might actually wrap a presentation at the 145 mark, like we say we're gonna do, for the first time in months.
No, I don't want to ruin that. I think we're good.
But do we have Gretchen here? Do we have Gretchen here? We don't have Gretchen here. Well, I have kind of given a preview of what we're covering on Tuesday. It's going to be more calculators, and we're going to do a bit more of a demo of Benefit Buddy that is within the portal. So that is kind of like the individual calculator we showed on steroids. There's a lot coming out of its ears. There's a lot of value that you can get out of it. And I think if you can really get up to speed with presenting using that tool, using the self-funding module, using custom LTCI, there's a ton you can get out of that. I personally have felt that effect just from having to become an expert in the tool. So you'll see a lot from that. And yeah, just a lot more to come. Mark, anything else you want to mention?
No, I appreciate you guys taking the time, and we'd love to get your feedback too, what you're seeing day in and day out in this types of markets. So don't be a stranger, just kind of shoot us some messages. And if you want to pilot test any of the tools as well, we're always looking for people to give us feedback on ways we can improve them. Because as you'll see coming up here, you're going to have a lot more available to you. So looking for people to get in there and start getting busy with it. So appreciate y'all being here.
Yeah, one more question. Sorry, we're holding you hostage past 145. I'm so sorry. Billy had a question. Are these webinars recorded? And if so, where can we find them? If you're on our email list, that you should be receiving an agenda and a recording for every call. If you find that your primary email address is not getting those messages, feel free to let me know, and we can pop you right on that list, because you'll know what's coming and what we've done the day of each study group. So there's that. Also in the buddy system, if you hit the study groups button, thank you, Mark, for the seamless transition there. We have all of our recorded study groups right
And
there
they're
for
and
you
they're
to.
chronological. So the latest one is going to show up at the top. There's also filters where you can choose different topics, and it will show you some study groups that it's suggesting based on your topic. And you can search. So if you
Use
search for,
use the search bar. There are tons of filters.
yeah, and you
So
can
I would
search for
use the search
carrier
bar.
names, and it will show you like all the carriers we've done with Transamerica, Allstate, the same thing. So if you want to dive deep into those products that we talked about today, this is the best way to do it, is just to go into the search and then just listen to it straight from the portal here.
Good deal. All right, that's it. I promise. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you next Thursday. Bye.
Everyone.